Hello, I'd like to welcome everybody to this Sannam S4 webinar on building your teams in India. As many of you will know, some of you may not know, Sannam S4 is a specialised consultancy business which helps Western businesses to enter and develop their market share in the Indian market. And today what we'd like to focus on is the issue around talent acquisition and talent management whilst you're working in India. We work with clients across the world who enter the Indian market, and they have a variety of challenges which face them if they want to develop a successful business. And one of the definite challenges that we feel they face is around this whole piece of recruiting and retaining and dealing with their Indian employees, and that's what we're going to focus on today. My name is Keith Warburton. I'm the International Business Development Director of Sannam S4, and so I work in the UK, the States, South Africa, etc., with clients who are entering into India. And I have with me, I'm in London today, but I have with me in our office in Delhi two of my colleagues, Soumya Agarwal and Rohan Muktali. So I don't know if you'd just like to quickly introduce yourself, Soumya and Rohan.
Okay, hello everyone, I'm Soumya Agarwal. I head recruitments here. We have various offices in India and have been here working here for more than 2 years now. Have been recruiting in India for almost 8-9 years now. So yeah, and here I am. Rohan?
Hello everybody, I am Rohan Muktali. I am the head of HR and HR advisory of Sannam S4 Consulting in India. Based in Mumbai, I guide my existing as well as potential customers who are looking to set up business in India on the various complexities of Indian employment laws as well as the best practices of HR in India. I look forward to this webinar today, and I hope that you find a lot of value in today's webinar. Keith, over to you.
So in preparation for this webinar, we thought a lot about the type of issues that we should cover. And so we have a series of questions that I'm going to ask to Rohan and Soumya around the typical types of issues that clients face when they enter India. But as well as that, you have the capability, those of you who are listening to the webinar, to ask us direct questions. So please feel free to send in any questions that you might have as we're going along, and we will take those questions at the end of the webinar. We know that you're all very busy, so we'll try not to take too much of your time. We anticipate that this webinar will last for about between 30 and 40 minutes, slightly depending on the number of questions we may get asked from you guys. So I'm going to start at the beginning, which is obviously the recruitment phase of your journey into India. And I know that India is there's a talent for war in India, as there is in many countries. There's a stretched employment scenario and environment in India. So Soumya, you are responsible for recruiting a range of different employees across a range of different sectors in India. So what would you say would be the key pointers that people need to think about when they're starting their recruitment process in India?
Keith, just to start with, I have a small poll for the audience here, because I know, people from various continents are logged in. So I have a small poll, so people can then send in their answers. So what are the hiring techniques that you've used while recruiting in India, if you have recruited in India, that is? So referencing recruitment agency, relocation from the parent company, wherein you had someone who's now relocated to India to work for your company in India, or probably headhunting. So everyone, please do attend this poll, and you can send in your answers, and I think towards the later half we'll pick it up. Okay, so coming back to Keith's question, I think talent acquisition remained a challenge in India, even while the times that there was a slowdown, right, Rohan? I'm sure you've been in HR, so it has been something which is a challenge in India, especially the skilled manpower. Everyone wants to believe that India has such a huge population, but does that really convert into skilled manpower? And now with Modi coming in, and a lot of focus being on reviving the manufacturing sector and the FDI, I'm sure that this gap will only increase.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think everyone should clearly define what their goals are when they actually think of entering a new territory and having their India operation started. They should really think about the India entry strategy, and that should immediately, very closely be followed by the recruitment plan. So all of them should be in sync, and you should work on that. You should really think, okay, why do I want to go to India? Am I looking at increasing my distributor network? Am I looking at selling in newer territories? So you need to know what your business plan is, and in accordance your recruitment plan goes. Along with that, I think you should actually develop a talent acquisition roadmap, which is very, very important. Rohan, I'm sure you would have also met a lot of companies where people have just come in and they don't have a clear roadmap.
Very often.
Yeah?
That happens very often.
Okay. Right. And then I think location is a business decision, and but you should always have your recruiter, who's your partner in India. You should always ask the recruiter for advice and check with the person that, okay, this is what the location of for my business should be, because then your recruiter will tell you, okay, these are the challenges which you might foresee in getting talent or skilled manpower, all unskilled manpower in that location. Then I think you should also provide your recruiter with the adequate amount of time to hire, because normally when you come to India or any new territory, you end up just getting too much entangled in the legal complexities of the market. And you think, okay, after that, all of that is over, now let me think of hiring people. So I think a better approach is to start it parallel to the handling of the legal stuff. So, or alternatively, I would suggest look at a service such as what Sannam S4 provides, which is like more of a soft landing platform, wherein you can have someone on your on the ground while you're working out the legal stuff. Though I would not suggest it for all types of businesses. Yeah.
Thanks, Soumya. Rohan, have you got anything to add to that from an HR perspective?
Absolutely. I very often meet clients who are typically confused about what's the first thing they should do. Whether they should focus on setting up their organization, get it registered, appoint directors, open a bank account, which is one of the most intricate things I believe, or simply hire people. And as Soumya rightly captured, that all of these challenges are important and they're practical, albeit it is important and it's actually an imperative that the process has to go simultaneously, because if you wait for either of these, there's a likelihood that you might stay behind for either of the processes. In my opinion, first thing, employers who are looking to enter the Indian market and hire people, they should be considering about who's the office holder who would be their first incumbent, because this first person would be responsible either for building or breaking the castle which they've envisaged and the road ahead. So I think making the right choice in the first hire is something very critical. What do you think, Soumya, on this?
Absolutely. I mean, you go wrong with your first hires and...
Yeah, so the cascade effect would really be a big issue in terms of investment of time as well as effort. Also, one thing I would like to add here is the kind of image new brands carry in India are very sensitive, and people who are very active in the job market, they very keenly watch new brands entering India. So from a brand perspective, if they do things right in the right manner, especially in the hiring mode, I think in the long run they do set up a strong image for themselves and the brand really remains firm and the effect is enduring. So I think these 2 points, I feel in my opinion, should be critical. Companies which are looking to enter and set up businesses in India should consider. I think,
Right.
Shall we take the second question in the poll section here?
I was just going to say, let's assume now that we have hired our first employee or our first number of employees. So we have whatever form of entity we have employees in India. From an HR compliance perspective, what are the key issues that an employer in India needs to think about right from the start?
Sure. Before I respond to this question, Keith, I will have to give you a quick background, and also, all the spectators and the audience who have logged into this webinar, that historically, India has been a very complex labor market. Still, written communication between the employer and employee holds maximum weightage in any kind of transactions between both the parties. So the first and foremost thing I suggest to all my clients and also to people who are listening us tonight, that the letter of intent or the offer letter, which is the first thing which is issued, or rather I believe that's the first formal dialogue between the employer and the employee, should be vetted and issued in the right manner. The offer letter should be drafted in a way that it covers all the applicable legal laws, as well as some best practices reflect in the offer letter, which is followed by the employment contract, which is a detailed document. It at times even supersedes the offer letter, but by and large captures most of the details in the offer letter. So first comes the offer letter, then the employment contract, and then the whole benefit structure. The reason I'm emphasizing on these things is because the mindset of Indian employees is the way that they need to see what's in for them and what really comes to them in black and white. Some, I'm sure, when you negotiate with the candidates on behalf of your clients, I'm sure you come across these questions about when do I expect the offer letter?
Yep.
Or where's the employment contract? I mean, unlike some of the Western countries, employment contract has a lot of importance in India today.
Yeah.
Then forming up a proper job description for the role, as well as setting up some key objectives for the role, is another thing which employers should consider. That really helps both the employer as well as the employee. Sure.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in there, Rohan. Soumya, from a recruitment perspective, how quickly do you need to get those offer letters out to a candidate if you're really keen on a particular candidate, and what are the consequences of not getting the offer letter out quickly?
So as soon as the interview process happens and the client is shortlisted, okay, it is A or B that I'm looking at to hire. So the person normally starts chasing you up, and in India especially, I've seen if someone is looking out for jobs, then that person is actually holding a couple of offers already in hand, or and wants to see the offer ASAP, or if not, then the person has a huge notice period, and the client is looking at the person joining in say 30 days or 45 days. So a lot of my candidates keep on telling me, Soumya, I have a minimum 90-day notice period. If you're looking at me joining on 45th day from today, you will have to give me the offer letter today. So offer letter is something which is extremely important. I mean, candidates just keep chasing you, and I get a lot of dropouts because of not releasing the offer letter in time because of some legal complexity. And I have also seen nowadays that, yeah.
I asked a question because I know that in the past, some of our clients, they've interviewed somebody, they really like them, then they go back to the UK or to the States and business takes over, and it can take them maybe a week or 10 days to get the offer letter out, and that can cause a serious problem, can't it?
Yes.
So Keith, I think as we are on this topic, let's take a relevant question on the poll. I would really appeal people to participate on this poll. So the question is, how much weightage does salary have in the decision making for a candidate to say yes to a company?
And what has been the average wage?
So I repeat the question, that how much weightage does salary as a component have in order to decide or making a decision for a candidate to say yes to a company?
I'm afraid that the poll question is not appearing, Rohan, so that's going to be quite difficult to for anybody to answer. Sorry for the slight.
Yeah, I think we are facing some technical issues here. Yeah.
Just to interrupt everyone, Keith, one more thing which I wanted to add from the recruitment perspective. A lot of clients fail to do appropriate background checks when they're hiring in India. So when you're talking about new companies need to be cautious about something, I think Rohan would agree. I mean, a lot of his clients are having, right from the junior most to the senior most employee, undergo a background check.
Yes, absolutely. And increasingly this practice is now becoming a mandate, especially when we talk about IT and ITS industries. Background check or reference check or pre-employment screening is something which is considered as one of the critical factors before employing a candidate. At the same time, coming back, Keith, to the original question, and I think now we'll take up the next poll on question on the same thing, that compensation is a critical thing. Now, it is just not the salary, but also the added benefits and specific perks which the candidates are interested in. In my opinion, many times when clients come and try to hire people in India, there's a lot of ambiguity or some kind of a dilemma in understanding what's the most appropriate compensation for a particular level. So I think that's another thing which should be really considered, that what would be the appropriate compensation, and we assist clients in actually helping them to understand and establish what would be an ideal combination of compensation and benefits for a particular role.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think one of the problems that companies quite often face when they go into India is setting their whole cost base at the right level. And so I think many companies go wrong at both ends. They either expect everything to be incredibly cheap in India, which it's not necessarily, or they think as long as it's 10% cheaper than it would be in the UK, that's quite good as well, and that might be 50% more than it would be locally. So I think ascertaining the right appropriate local level of compensation to get the right people in and retain them is absolutely critical. And I know, Rohan, that you do quite a lot of salary benchmarking around that, don't you?
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. And I think companies do find it very interesting at the end of the whole process when we submit a report, because there are some alarming facts which really come out as a product out of the whole exercise, and sometimes they find it a very compelling reading, because it just not gives them an understanding about what compensation or benefits to be offered, but also some of the underlying compliances which are specific to industries, which really help them understand that. Keith, while we are on this topic, I would like to ask you, because I know that you work with a lot of Western clients, and especially those Western clients who have significant operations in India, and many of them struggle with a lot of cultural issues while they do business here. So could you talk a little bit about some of these cultural issues which clients raise with you?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I think, first of all, just to say that it's no more difficult or easier when you're working in India than it is in other countries. That there will be those cultural differences between the way that you operate and the way that your target market operates wherever you are. But certainly, I think India has its own specific cultural challenges, as all countries do. But before I talk a little bit about that, the other thing that I'd like to say is that as a Western organization going into India, you need to recognize that not only do Indians do things in a particular way, which is obviously based on Indian cultural characteristics, but you have to recognize that you as a Westerner are going into India with your own cultural spectacles and your own biases. And a lot of our clients struggle with the fact that things are different in India, and they relate the fact that they're different to the fact that maybe things are wrong. The way they do things in India is wrong, and it's not a question of them being wrong, it's just a question of being difficult. You recognize that you take your own cultural biases and finding out where the similarities and differences are between your own approach and the Indian approach, and working with those differences. So I suppose the most obvious cultural difference that you find when you work in India, and this certainly relates very much to the HR and recruitment process, is the fact that I would say that of all the business cultures in the world, India is probably the most hierarchical business culture there is. And that impacts on every aspect of doing business in India, from the way in which you structure your company to the way in which you, as a leader, will deal with your employees. But some really concrete ways in which Indian cultural differences will impact on the recruitment and HR process, the most obvious and apparent one, I think, would be the weight that's placed upon the importance of job titles in India. And I think this is something that a lot of Western companies struggle with. So, Sonia, I don't know if you'd like to say something about the importance of job titles, getting the job title right in the whole recruitment process.
Yes, absolutely. Keith, I do agree with you. It is a challenge whenever I meet a client from any of the Western countries, and they show me the JD, the job description. So I go through it, and the senior most person that they're looking for will be called a sales executive or a marketing executive here. And they're looking for someone with 10, 15, 18 years of experience. Now, in India, an executive like a marketing executive or any executive is supposed to be the junior most person in the hierarchy, and eventually as you grow up the ladder, you become manager or a general manager, and then directors and vice presidents. So then is the main part when I have to convince the companies that this is something which will not work in India, because people will not apply for the job. In India, job titles are very important. When you're looking for a job change, I know, I mean, salary is one part, but then again, your job title is, I mean, almost as good as getting you a good wife in India.
Absolutely.
I'm sure, I mean, Rohan would agree to that.
Yeah, I think there's also a lot of social pressure when it comes to titles, especially because what title you carry on a business card, you know, definitely places you in a better way in the society or any social gathering. You know, things like when you attend a social gathering, and if somebody refers you with a particular title which you carry, that really helps people to differentiate your positioning in that particular gathering. So absolutely, Keith, culturally, titles are something which is a very sensitive topic in the employment world of India.
Sonia, would you say, Sonia, that even if you offered somebody a 50% salary hike, but the job title is not right, they will turn down the offer?
Keith, even with 100% salary hike, people will turn that down.
Yeah, and sometimes from a Western perspective, that's difficult, because Western companies will have titles that they will use all over the world, and the same title refers to the same level within the organization. But that title, if you use it in India, could stop you from recruiting the right caliber of people.
Absolutely. I agree with you. In India, you also want to see a lot of geographies in your title. That is one more thing. Like, if the person has regional head, so North, so that is a lower designation compared to regional head India or South Asia. I had one of my clients who said, okay, I want this person, he's going to head sales in India, and we'll look after Bangladesh, Nepal, South Asia and everything, but yeah, so he'll be like the sales head in India. I said, then why don't you give him the designation of a sales head South Asia? He said, would that really matter? I said, yes, it would matter big time. That will save you a lot of cost and attract a lot better talent. So that's the extent, Keith.
Yeah. And another byproduct of the fact that India is so hierarchical, I think, is in the whole topic of attrition. And many Western businesses struggle with high levels of attrition in their Indian workforce. Why might that be the case, Rohan, and what can people do to try and reduce levels of attrition?
I think one of the key reasons for attrition is mismanaged employees. That's typically seen in companies who newly set up in India, but have not really set themselves to a phase where they can meet the expectations of the employees. in a new market, when employers hire new employees for their company or plant or industries, employees come on board with a lot of expectations, and primarily it's seen, and Soumya, you can echo that these candidates come from various big organizations, and they are looking forward to some kind of an entrepreneurial experience in these new setups. Now, things go wrong typically when the objective for the role is not defined. The employee is not sure about what are the key result areas, or we commonly say KRAs, for that role. And 6 months down the line, if the employee is being told that there are certain areas of improvement for the employee, that there's a high level of demotivation which seeps in there. Secondly, if the benefits which are offered to the employee are not in line or aligned with the best practices of HR within India, or if the offers are not competitive, gradually a lot of dissatisfaction starts seeping in within the employee's mind. If there's an absence of reward and recognition, and when I say that, I mean that frequent reward and recognition practice within the organization, then that definitely leads to employee demotivation, because at the end of the day, the employee sometimes puts that extra effort to achieve, because especially the first team members who are performing in that setup, they have to multitask. They have to develop business for the organization. They have to set up the brand image for the organization. At the same time, they have to manage people. So while they're doing this, if that effort is constantly recognized and rewarded, that definitely leads to high level of employee motivation. So I think overall, to sum this up, offering the right compensation, making sure that the benefits which are offered that are at par with one of the best in the industries. There's constant reward and recognition program for the employees, and the culture of the employee world, or the culture of the organization, is in a way which is quite conducive for working, and most importantly, hard work is just not recognized but also endorsed. I think these are some of the reasons which really make sure that attrition rate can be reduced in organizations in India.
Rohan, can you just say exactly what you mean by reward and recognition? Because reward and recognition comes in many different formats.
So, when I say reward and recognition, Keith, what I mean is that if an employee is demonstrating an acceptable level of performance, or actually even exceeding the expectations of the organization, that level of performance should be rewarded, in the sense it can be either acknowledged in public forums whenever there are employee meetings, or there could be a small gesture from the organization where a certificate of performance is issued, or in many organizations, especially in progressive companies in India, it is seen that a consistent level of performance which is higher than the standard set for the role is rewarded in a way that either the employees sent for some high-level skill programs, or there is some kind of a value addition to the role, or simplest thing could be even promoting the employee and offering him a bigger responsibility to maybe manage a team, or give him a bit of extra responsibility in terms of geography. That really sends the right message, not just to the employee, but also the other members in the team. A recognition in the right sense, what I mean is, any level of performance which is made a good impact, whether has pleased the client or has made a positive impact on the business, should be immediately recognized, and it should be recognized in the right time frame, because that really sends, again, a very good message to other employees who perhaps are underperforming, that the organization has a culture where every bit of work is seen positively, is recognized, and organizations or company as a whole has a very high level of appreciation, rather, for any good performance level, and I think that really helps in career progression of the employees as well. So these two things, if they are exercised consistently and in the right way, I think that definitely boosts the morale of the employee, and the side effect of that, if I may say so, would be attrition control. And today in India, if you see, the average attrition rate would be anywhere between 21 to 25%. But there are organizations which face a lot of underperformance issues. The attrition rate even goes to up to 50%. And this was primarily witnessed in the whole recession period in 2008-9. But I think companies are now, stable. The new government is bringing them some right policies, and then I think in the long run, some of the best practices coupled with the right culture as well as a rewarding culture in companies would definitely nip the issue, it in the bud and help on attrition control. Would you want to add anything, Soumya, here?
See, I think, as I said, people are getting multiple offers. That is my biggest challenge, especially I have seen since the time that the new government has come into place. Anyone right now is sitting with multiple offers. Most of my candidates right now are sitting with multiple offers. So attrition, also because there are a lot of new jobs getting created in the India market.
Sure. Just on that, on a concluding note here, that the shelf life of jobs across levels has reduced significantly. It will be surprising for some of the listeners this evening that the average shelf life is today anywhere between 3 to 4 years, and that's also seen at the chief executive level. That really shows that there's enough out there in the market, and the right thing is just to tap that potential and attract talent. So I think it's a combination of all the things which we just discussed, which really helps companies, and especially new organizations who are trying to firm up their base in India, would really benefit from that.
I think Keith and Rohan, we are getting some questions from the audience. Should we just pick up the questions towards the end of the session?
I think that makes sense. So, Keith.
Yeah. Just before we go to those questions from the audience, so one thing that I just wanted to ask Rohan, and just very, very briefly, and I know it's impossible to be very, very brief about this, Rohan, but Indian labour law, is it very simple or is it very complex?
It's very intricate, and it's as easy as difficult. I would respond that way. Just to quickly elaborate on this, people, especially who come from the Western side and the Western world, who set up or who try to set up companies in India, they typically hear a lot of horror stories about how labor laws and the issues have gone wrong in India. The recent case at the Maruti Manesar plant. Maruti is one of the largest car makers in India, but the things which really went out of control there, and the entire world saw what really was an outcome. If you actually do a bit of genesis there, it's a simple employer relation issue which has gone wrong. There are about 46 employment laws which are applicable to companies who operate in India. So it's practically difficult
46.
to, can you just repeat that? Yes, 46. 46.
Just repeating the number, 46, yeah.
Yeah, it's 46. So it's almost impossible for businesses to be aware of all these laws and stay compliant. And that's where, consultants like us really help them to stay abreast of the changing employment laws. It's a fast, dynamic world out there, and especially with the new government coming in, they have really pledged to actually get rid of some of these laws which are very obsolete and even redundant in today's world. And some changes are also seen which the industry, especially and the HR market, is welcoming. Like the recent law for the sexual harassment of women at workplace, or the social security limit increase. It shows that the government is quite committed to make sure that employment law world in India is not seen as a complex jungle of statutes.
But how old would these laws be? Any idea?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question actually. The surprising fact is some of these laws are as old as 92 years. If you go back,
are they still applicable in today's world?
Absolutely. If I take an example of Bombay Shops and Establishment Act, it's as old as 1927.
But do you think it still has any relevance? Because I think now the labor laws are going to get changed. So they are kind of working on some reforms now.
But till they get changed, they are applicable.
Yeah, but are they applicable, like, as in, are they relevant?
They are relevant.
Or are they obsolete?
They are relevant, but what I would say here, I would specifically add this point, that even though some of the laws are still relevant, the mindset of the enforcement officers and the mindset of the regulator is changing. Inspections happen still in companies, but what we see during these inspections that there's a lot of acceptance of technology, and companies do now have a good understanding about these laws, and they meet these inspectors with a different attitude altogether. And most importantly, the changing labor market. That's how the Contract Labor Act, which is getting revisited and revisited, that is really making it easy for companies to do business in India. And I think the regulators are also showing that kind of a cognizance that it's high time that some of the employment laws need to be changed as well.
Okay. Keith?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, since I know, you've been working on both the sides, East and West, and working with a lot of companies. So I wanted to ask, what would be your tips when people are working with Indian counterparts?
I think that one piece of advice would be just to do some research on Indian business culture before you go there. I think that on a general level, one of the things that people do quite badly wrong when they go to India is they don't do enough due diligence on all aspects of their business going into India. And they certainly tend not to do much due diligence in terms of what will the cultural challenges be that they face when they go there. So the simple answer to it is just do a bit of work. Don't just turn up without any knowledge of what to expect when you get to India. India is a massively relationship-oriented culture, and it's difficult to do serious business in India unless you're able to create those deep and long-lasting relationships. But it's really difficult to form a good relationship with people unless you culturally understand them, unless you're on their wavelength, and you can build that relationship through that joint knowledge. So do a little bit of research would be my advice.
Okay, and Rohan, what do you think? Because I do agree with Keith, because in India, every 500 kilometers or 500 miles, the language changes, the dialect changes, yes, the food habits change, the culture changes. So you really have to do a lot of due diligence, a lot of research on where and how and what to do. So I wanted to take your opinion on when looking at compensation, when looking at a new geography, how important is doing some salary benchmarking?
I think in my opinion it's very critical to consider doing some kind of a salary survey, because given the vast geography of India and given the number of states, the per capita income varies across cities. The lifestyle across cities are again different. The cost of living in metros versus mini metros with a population of, let's say, about 5 million people is totally different. So it's often seen that, let's say, a sales manager in the capital, Delhi, would be paid slightly less than a sales manager in Mumbai, given the fact that the city of Mumbai is a bit expensive when it comes to cost of living. So I think this kind of knowledge is only available when somebody dives deep in this ocean of information and tries to get, as I made a point earlier, a close report which actually just not offers information on salary or remuneration, but also some of the benefits, which makes sure that the deserving candidate gets the right amount of compensation, as well as the company is not really investing money where it should not be. Also, to add on the point you made, that most of the organizations, especially foreign companies who have been in India or who are coming to India, also are promoting the concept of diversity and inclusion, which is really helping them to hire workforce from different parts of societies, and there are certain mandates about where what kind of positions they need to hire, which would actually support some of the underprivileged sections of the society. So I think that culturally this is rated very high, and government today is also encouraging organizations. So whether it's through the CSR, the corporate social responsibility role, or to having simple mandates like diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, I think because I'm recruiting people day in, day out. One biggest challenge which I see is that when you're hiring in India, you don't really know your numbers. So what you end up doing is either you end up not paying the right amount and not getting the right talent, or even if you end up getting the talent, the people don't stay with you. So a lot of poaching happens, and people leave you within 3 months, 6 months. So that is one particular area. Then the other would be, or you end up paying so much that it leaves a big hole in your pocket. So
yeah,
what should that right number be, especially for the key employees? Do you think, I mean, that is very, very important nowadays?
It is, and that's where the whole salary benchmarking exercise plays a pivotal role, because eventually any organization who is trying to enter a new geography would have some steep budgets, and they need to really perform optimally within that budget. So if they have some kind of benchmark figures in front of them, or if the head of international sales has to go back and present that to the larger board sitting in the home country, it makes far more easy for the whole group to have their projections in place. And these are all realistic figures. Even at times we've helped organizations, I'm sure you would remember, to give them projections about their increments and bonus over the next 3 years as well.
Yes.
So that really helps them to have that blueprint over the next 3 years for a particular function, which eventually makes their business decisions easy.
Okay, Rohan, Soumya, I think we only have a couple of minutes left. Time is pressing on, so we want to look at a couple of the questions that have come through just finally.
Yeah. So I think let's take the first question. So the first question which we have on the screen here reads as, you had one survey question about rate of inflation, how it is being compensated or dealt with. Salary increments in India typically are visited annually, and the way it is dealt with most of the companies, and when we especially work with new clients in India, the way we advise is that we show them a picture about what's the overall inflation rate in India. So if we today take the general inflation rate, today it's anywhere between 8.5% to 9%. But if we talk especially about the fuel and food inflation, it's actually hit the roof. It's anywhere between 18 to 19%. So an average of that would be somewhere about 12.5% to 13%.
Yes.
So our suggestion or our advice to our clients when it comes to an average figure would be about 12%. But that's of course not by default. That's also coupled with another advice that we also need to see the yes, absolutely, the level of performance. I mean, in India typically, in most of the companies there would be 4 brackets. So if the performance of an employee is below expectations, the employee would end up getting a very basic increment, which would be about 8-9%, just to meet the inflation. If it's meeting expectations, but there are still more areas to cover, then the employee typically gets between 10 to 12%. If it's exceeding expectations, then the inflation index or the increment index is about 13 to 15%. And only an outstanding level of performance earns or gets rewarded with 18 to 20%. That's what the industry average is today.
Keith, do you want to add something to this, or should we proceed with the next question?
I think we should just take one more question very quickly, and then I will wrap up.
Okay. So there's the question, which is, what is the normal handover period in India, and how much time an employee has to serve in a notice period on average? So I think typically the average notice period can range anywhere from 30 to 90 days, depending upon the position of the person in the organization. So like lower to middle management, it is approximately 30 to 45 days. And higher up in the hierarchy, it goes to 45 days to 60-90 days. And that is the kind of notice period which an employee has to serve. And as Rohan had mentioned earlier, that notice period is mentioned in your offer letter and your employment agreement, and it is the liability of the employer and the employee.
Yes,
right, Rohan?
Absolutely. To add to that very quickly, there is no legal provision for notice period as such for non-workmen people in India. Non-workmen are the people who perform supervisory or authoritative functions, the kind of people which most of the companies who set up in India hire. So for them, there is no statutory provision as such. So everything depends on what's the provision for notice period in the employment contract. And as Soumya rightly said, it would vary anywhere between 1 to 3 months. It actually also can go to 6 months if it is at the chief executive level. At times, even these notice periods are negotiated and amicably resolved if the handover is done properly and if the employee's got something very emergent to attend, then both the parties do arrive at a common conclusion to even reduce the notice period or even to waive off the notice period as such.
Okay. So thanks, Rohan. Keith, we have some 5-6 more questions. I think we'll collect all the questions and we can send the answers across to all the attendees later on in next 1 or 2 days.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think it would be good if I could just wrap up now. Well, I hope everybody's found this useful. We've had about 80 people from I think about 11 different countries attending, so there's obviously a great interest in this topic around the world. And what we've tried to do today is just to raise a few of the issues. Obviously, it's a very complex topic, and we can't cover it all in a webinar like this. But we'll be very happy to answer any specific questions that people might have, help them with any of the issues that they face in India with their employees and their recruitment issues. As an organisation, as I said at the beginning, we help many companies enter India right from the beginning, from the research piece right through to setting up their entities, recruiting people, etc. That's 75% of the companies we work with. The other 25% of the companies we work with, they come to us and they say, we have been in India for 2 or 3 years and we're not really being very successful. Why is that? And very often, I think a lot of the problems that they face are around people. They hire the wrong people originally. They remunerate them inappropriately, either too low or too high, and the result of that is their cost base is wrong or they can't keep their right staff. So if you do want to develop and grow a business in India, it's the same in all countries, but it's absolutely critical that you get these people issues right. And I hope you found this interesting and useful. We're here if anybody needs any further advice or help. We'd be delighted to hear from you. Thank you very much for taking some time out of what I'm sure is a very busy schedule for you, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future. Thank you and goodbye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.